Chief, you gotta believe me. You're gonna think I'm blind.
Rocks, Joe? Powers of rock crashing down and then growing up again?
Yeah.
Perhaps a part of the process is the absorption of silica, taking it right out of whatever it comes into contact with, like
Human beings?
Just like Ben, their bodies are turned to stone.
What was this amazing power that could turn people into stone, that could suddenly turn inanimate rocks, stones, monoliths, into growing, spreading, expanding monsters, threatening to engulf whole towns and cities, to bury all civilization under an immensity of weight beyond all calculation?
The natural slope of the valley floor is bringing them right down here.
and once they break through to the other side of the mountains, there'll be no stopping them ever.
Look, all we're asking you to do is save her life.
I can't cope with something I don't even understand.
Hey, Voyagers. Here we go again with another science lesson. Last week, it was all about minerals, those objects that are 100% pure. But this week, it's all about rocks. And if you remember from a couple weeks ago, rocks are mixtures of things. They're not 100% pure. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you some samples, and you're going to have to figure out what is the name of the rock sample, the rock samples that I show you. I do want to tell you there's 3 different categories of rocks. And here's a rock sample kit. And in it is one category of rock or one sample. And all of these are what's called sedimentary rocks. And sedimentary rocks basically are bits and pieces, and that's what sediments are. Sediments are small chips or small pieces that get stuck together. And usually those sediments end up at the bottom of water, like an ocean or a river or a lake. And then the pressure of the water will push them together to form a rock, a sedimentary rock. Another type of rock, another category, is igneous. An igneous rock is quite simply a rock that was once melted or molten. And these igneous rocks formed from either magma or lava, which are names of molten rock, and then hardened. So all of these igneous rocks were once liquid, and then they cooled and solidified to become igneous rocks. And then the third and final category of rocks are metamorphic. And metamorphic rocks, well, to morph means to change. So all of these rocks had another name. And then after thousands or hundreds of thousands of years, just a little bit of heat, but not enough to melt them, just enough to soften them up and then reharden. Well, that softening and rehardening changed them, and it changed their name, and it changed the way they are. They look similar, but they're definitely much harder than they were before. And these are metamorphic rocks, rocks that were something else and then changed into another type of rock. So those are the 3 types, the 3 categories of rocks. What you're going to do this week is, before I show you some rock samples, you're going to have to read this, and I'll include this in the movie in a moment. You're going to have to read about some background knowledge about the 3 types of rocks: metamorphic, igneous, and sedimentary. And then I'm going to show you some rock samples, and you're going to have to explain to me or send back to me what are those rocks called. And I'm going to show you some colored picture plates again of some images and some descriptions. Make sure you read the descriptions, and you're going to have to match up what that sample is, what's the name of the rock, and which category of rock does it belong to, if it's igneous, sedimentary, or metamorphic. And you're going to send me back a sheet similar to this one. Now, as always, I'll include this at the end of the movie. You can download it or just make your own. It doesn't matter. The number on the rock sample, the category of rock, metamorphic, igneous, or sedimentary, and what is the rock called? What's the name? And I'm going to show you 6 samples. Well, all right, I'll let you get something to write with a pen or pencil, and we'll come back in a moment and get started with those samples. All right, Voyagers, let's get right to the samples. Here we go. There's going to be 6 samples. Sample number 1. Sample number 1 is made up of pieces of other rocks that formed underwater, and these pieces got pushed, compacted together to form this rock. And these pieces that make up this rock are very big. They're actually bigger than 2 millimeters, which is a good size piece of these smaller pieces that got stuck together. When you look at these pieces, they're bigger than 2 millimeters, which is big, and they're rounded. The pieces that make up this rock are round. And that's sample 1. Sample 2. Also formed underwater, under a lake or a river. Very big pieces that made up this rock, bigger than 2 millimeters again, except the pieces in this rock that are bigger than 2 millimeters are pointed, or they're angular. You can see they're not round, they're pointed or angular. Sample 2. Sample 3. This rock is volcanic, which means it was made from melted rock or molten rock. It was actually made from lava, which is molten rock outside, that was outside the Earth. And it cooled very quickly because it came in contact with water, probably ocean water. It cooled so quick that the air bubbles still present. You can still see where those air bubbles were when this rock cooled. Volcanic rock, big air bubbles. There's sample 3. Rock sample 4, also volcanic, which means it was formed from melted or molten rock. But this rock is dark black and very smooth, glassy. You could consider it very shiny or very glassy or glossy. This rock was actually used by doctors long ago before they had metal scalpels, which are knives that doctors use, because the edges are sharp. Some people call this volcanic glass, but that's sample 4. Sample 5. This rock was once had another name. It was made from a mineral that was the softest of all the minerals. That had a Mohs scale of hardness of 1. And when you touch it or feel it, it still feels a little bit greasy or smooth, because that mineral that had a Mohs scale of 1 was very smooth and greasy. This rock got changed and it has a new name, but it still feels greasy to the touch or smooth. And that's rock sample 5. Rock sample 6 also had another name and got changed. Heated up a little bit, but not enough to melt it, just like rock 5. Just enough to warm it up and change it. This rock sample is dark black again. It's kind of dirty, rubs off black. This rock is organic, which means it was made from things once living, plants that got buried underground, and after hundreds, thousands, or millions of years, formed into this rock, and this is rock sample 6. This rock is also used to produce electricity in the United States. It'll burn if it gets hot enough, and it is used to heat up water, to make steam, to turn turbines in power plants. Rock sample 6. Well, there you go, 6 samples. You have to figure out their names and which category of rocks do they belong to, if they're sedimentary, igneous, or metamorphic. All right, Voyagers, let's take a look and see what we have to do this week. We were looking at 6 different rock samples. The 6 samples could have either been metamorphic, igneous, or sedimentary, which are the 3 categories of rocks. You have to send me this. You can make your own or download it, print it, fill it in, and send it back. It doesn't matter. Either way is fine. The left column has to be the number on the sample of the rock. The middle column has to be which category? Sedimentary, igneous, or metamorphic? And then the last column over here, what's the name of the rock? You really need to read this first. It gives you a little background on the 3 types of rocks. Make sure you read that. I'll include it at the end of the movie, of course. And then I'm also including these color plates with descriptions. Make sure you read the descriptions. There's clues in there as to what are the names of these rocks, these 6 mystery rocks that I just showed you. So make sure you look at the pictures and read the descriptions. Well, Voyagers, that's it for this week. Make sure you send me a copy of this, attach it to your email, and send it to me by next week. And as always, take care, be safe, and I'll see you next week for our last science lesson of this year. Well, have a good night.